Hi, thanks for joining us for the Larimer County Show. My name's Denny LaRue, Larimer County Community Information Manager, and I'm here with my host, Neil Gluckman, Assistant County Manager, and we have Dr. David Gilliland with us today too, and Dave is the Associate Professor of Marketing at Colorado State University. Thanks for being here, Dave.
Oh, my pleasure.
And we've worked with Dave 5 years now on citizen surveys for Larimer County, starting in 2004. So we've got some good trend lines over time, which we'll be talking about later.
Right, we have about 10 years of data, and so that allows us to look and see how performance has changed and how the importance of the services have changed. And so every couple years when we do this, we learn a little bit more.
So
Great.
Let's start out by making sure that you have the right credentials for the job. Are you really a doctor, and why would a pediatrician be doing this type of work? We do know you are a doctor, but why are you doing this type of survey for us? So what gives you the credentials to do this type of service for us?
Right, well, we've been working together for a while, and I think we both enjoy the survey process and all. And in my job at CSU, that's what I am, as a survey researcher. And we do different types of survey research, and most of those things we've done in our process over the years. We do phone work, we do online surveys, we do mail surveys, and so that's what I do pretty much every day. And I also teach a marketing research class, which is also based a lot on some of the statistics we use here and some of the surveys that we do.
And and we're very fortunate to have you in our back door, so to speak, right, in the backyard. And not the back door, but we are in our backyard. I mean, we're very fortunate to have CSU, and particularly having you here,
Right.
and to be able to use the resources that you and CSU have.
Right, thank you.
You know, it's true, because we a lot of times will tweak the survey a little bit here and there, and you
Right.
can tell us, well, that will get you what you're looking for, or that won't give you the kind of information you're looking for. So we rely on that expertness that you have. And this is a random and scientific survey, so it's a pretty reliable survey as the type of surveys you do, and it gives us a good snapshot. So before we get into the responses, give us a little bit of details about, if you were to say what sticks out in your mind as to what the survey says this year.
I'd say two or three things. First of all, I'd say stability. We've
Okay.
been doing this, as you said, since about 2002, and things are stable over time. Performance has been pretty stable over time. It's actually improved a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The importance of the services offered have been stable over time, and so there are no great changes. Even though the economy has gone through a lot of changes and politics has gone through a lot of changes in the last 10 or 12 years, Larimer County keeps improving and keeps doing a stable job. So I think that's what citizens want to see. The other observation is that the services that Larimer County performs are important. You don't do a lot of services that citizens say, well, why are they doing that services? We don't really need that service done. In fact, only 12% of the responses said that that's not an important service. So every service it's very good news. I think it shows you're spending money in the right places and doing the right things. And so 88% of the services you provide are either important or very important, which really says a lot about what you do.
Mm-hmm. And the way we work this out, we work with Dr. Gillen, and we try to put all the services that Larimer County has to offer for our citizens in that list.
Right. We have some 32 services that you provide, everything from running elections to running Larimer County Health Center, to detoxification services and everything in between.
Mm-hmm.
So we know it's good to know what your customers think. Everybody, I think, could agree to that. But specifically, when we started out doing this survey, it was a lot about the budget process.
Right. It started out with the budget, and now it's expanded to, we now look at the survey to decide what's important for the community,
Right.
and what's not. But from your perspective, why do you think it's important for us to do a survey?
Well, I think for two reasons. One is to make sure we have happy citizens. And if we're tapping into the market and understanding how people feel about the things that we do, and we can look at these things over time, we can say with a good deal of confidence that Larimer County citizens support the government, support Larimer County government, and support the services that you provide. So I think that's probably one of the most important reasons for doing that.
Mm-hmm. And it helps us to determine the resources to use for those that they do find important, and the ones that they don't, maybe we need to take a look at and do something else.
Absolutely. It's a budget constraint issue. Times are tough and funds are limited, and we can't do all the things we'd like to do, but what can we do that's important and that's performed well?
Okay. So without a lot of detail, how many respondents did we have? We had an amazing response rate.
Right, and what a response rate means, it means a couple of things. It
Okay.
means, first of all, with the high response rate, it means that we've done a real good job with the method. And it means that there's more, we can rely on these numbers a lot better. The higher your response rate, the more reliable the numbers. Our response rate runs in the 60%,
Yeah, that's amazing.
which is fantastic. Most researchers would give anything just about to be able to do 60% response. But the reason we get 60% response is because citizens are interested in the survey process.
Yeah.
In other words, if you're selling Oreo cookies and you call someone up and you want to do a survey, most of us would say no because they really don't care. But when someone calls them up and asks if they do a Larimer County survey, people say yes because they do care about the county.
That's great. That's great. And we had how many participants in this?
We had over 420 participants, which means our error rates stay low. It means our reliability is good. Obviously, the more participants you have, the more like the real world it is. But there's always a trade-off between cost and how much data you can collect. So what we try to do is walk that line and find the right amount of data for not spending too much money.
And one of the things I think is important to note is that we added in cell phones this year. Now you call
We did.
people, and your people you work with are called.
Right.
When someone's randomly chosen, they're called, and then they agree to take it, and then you send them an online link. So they can do it all online,
Right.
and the fact that we use cell phones also in the mix
Right,
is
and
important.
Yeah, that's
change.
right. So the survey is actually taken online, but as you said, we have to recruit people to get online to take the survey. So how do we do that? We call them up. We use cell phones because the people that use cell phones or the younger half of the population, if you will. And in the past, we've done these surveys, and I've done these surveys in other areas, and the more we stick with landlines, we find the average age of the survey taker gets older and older, and that might not be representative of the county. So what we did this time was we looked at cell phone users as well as landlines in order to get that average age
Mix.
down.
And a
Yes.
good mix. That's great.
And you go back to when we first worked with Dr. Gillan, we used to have the survey in an envelope with a self-return.
We did.
Yeah.
And
We did. We packed 1,000 or so
Right.
surveys together and
Right.
sent them out and paid to send them out in the mail and paid to have them come back to us. And now
Exactly, yeah.
it works so much better,
right.
so much faster.
It could be why the response rate is higher too. It's just easier for people to go online,
I
fill
think
it
it
out,
is.
submit.
It's easier to type in a few sentences about how you feel than to sit down and write it.
Yeah.
Put it in the envelope, take it to the post office, or put it in your mailbox. You just hit enter and you're done.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the survey itself. Besides my job, let's talk. What other jobs or what other services came out?
Who else is important?
Yeah. Right. What else was most important?
Well, after you, Neil, there
Yeah.
were several things that were seen as important. And most
I
of
pointed out the
these-
gap was like this, right?
Well, yeah, just about. The most important service that the county provides, according to the citizens, is recycling and solid waste management. And that's been highly important for several years that we've done this survey, and it still is. So the citizens see the recycling program and managing the landfill and solid waste is the most important thing that the county does. Besides that, the most important things have to do with safety, has to do with restaurant inspections to protect our food supplies. It has to do with the public health organization that keeps us, healthy and safe, and also law enforcement and operating the jail, public safety issues. So public health, public safety tend to rate right at the top of the importance.
And now we've found out from past times when we've done the survey, when there's a fire, which there was a fire pretty close to when the survey was conducted, those affect the outcomes.
Right.
One of the things that in this survey for this year was mental health. And of course the speculation is that there's a lot of attention right now for various reasons on mental health. Do you want to?
And the Hyde Park fire. Too.
And the Hyde Park fire. So you had the fire and the mental health things. Those two, did they come up to the top?
Not the mental health issues so much. Fire is always seen as important, one of the safety issues, maybe a little bit more important this year because of the fire. It depends on what season we do the survey. If we'd run this during the fire season when the smoke was everywhere, as it was last year, then it would have been higher. But you're absolutely right. Depending on what's on in the news, what people are talking about, those services tend to rate more important, and sometimes it affects someone's perception of how well the service is performed. If you remember the Timothy Masters trial several years ago, and that was in the news so much, and so the DA was seen as less effective than they had been in the past, and they've always been seen as very, very effective. Now their ratings are back up there very, very high. So yeah, the numbers are affected a little bit
by
what goes
issues.
on.
Yeah.
So what are the differences between people and importance? In other words, do certain groups of people think things are more important than other groups?
Yes, we always take the data, and as we say, we chop it up and we look at differences in gender, we look at differences in age. The younger people tend to think that employment issues are most important. Employment support, employment training, finding jobs. As they get older, as we get older, then we think about public safety more. We think about law enforcement and public health and things like that. We look at things by income. The lower the income, the more we care about jobs and things like that. The higher the income, again, it's more public safety and things like that. We also look at whether people live inside the city limit or outside the city limit. And that's where we find some interesting things. Those, and things we'd expect, really. Those that live outside the city limit are more concerned about county roads and the county law enforcement support, the sheriff's office. Those of us that live inside the city limit, well, we have other police support. We have the city road system, so we're not, we don't find those things as important. But you're absolutely right. We look at the data in a lot of different ways, and it shows us that different people feel different ways about the services.
So we've been talking about importance. How well are we doing in terms of performance?
You're doing real well, and you've been doing real well over time. And if we looked at a chart, we'd find that performance creeps steadily, slowly but steadily up every 2 years that we do this survey. And the way we check performance is kind of in a somewhat different way. We ask if the service was performed inadequately, adequately, or better than necessary. And what we find is about 90% of the services are performed either adequately or better than necessary. And interestingly enough, the services that are performed or that are most important are performed the best. And I think that's a function of us having done the survey for years and being able to make budget tweaks and changes, so we know the things that are important and we can perform those services better than we do other things.
Right, and talk about that opposite end. When we see things that are better than necessary, what message does that tell us?
Well, it tells us that we have some really effective, efficient employees, I think, for one thing. But it might be a suggestion that in the days of very limited budgets and slicing that budget pie, maybe that particular service that's performed better than people need it to be performed, maybe that's where a slight budget cut would come in. Whether a service that's important and not performed as well as it maybe could be performed, maybe you can shift the budget around like that a little bit.
I also noticed that, and I think that sometimes, people have to look at all these services, and things like air and water quality might be more important to them than, say, going to an event, at the ranch or something. It's not that it's not performed well, but when you look at the sort of hierarchy of needs. But I've noticed also that length of time in the county, how long people have lived here, is one of the things we measure in terms of importance. And it sounded like people who have lived here less time consider social services more important than people who have lived here a long time.
That's right. I think that's maybe a function of age as well. The people that are younger and have not lived in the county as long as others, they look at the social services and
support systems,
the support system that the county provides, and they find those things more important than people who have lived here longer. And I think what we can take from that is the people who have lived here longer, a little bit more well established. They have their networks of services worked out, maybe a little bit more than those people that are more new to the county.
Okay. One of the other things we look at is attitudes, and I
Yes.
find this area really interesting because to me it's a real barometer. And we asked 3 questions that we began last year asking, or not last year, but the last time we did the survey
Right.
in 2010, and then a new question. One of them was the brand new question, is Larimer County moving in the right direction?
Right, and it's a great question to ask. You know, are we going in the right direction, even though things are performed well, and all? Are they performed well in the right direction? And what we did was we asked that question. We made a statement: is Larimer County moving in the right direction? And the respondent would check a box or check between 1 and 5, with 1 being strongly disagree and 5 being strongly agree. The number that came out was 3.6. So we can look at that 2 different ways. One is it's good news. It's on the positive side that Larimer County is moving in the right direction. But another way to look at that is it's not that much more than just the average number. So you know, some people feel that things could be going a little bit better than they are. But in general, I think that the citizens feel that it's moving in the right direction.
Some of the other questions in the attitude were the confidence in Larimer County
Right.
government. And that came out to 3.6 this time?
3.6 also, yeah, that's how confident people are in the Larimer County government, which shows they're pretty confident in government. And if we think about what's going on in Washington and the confidence we have in Washington and in some other places, the 3.6 is a pretty good score, I think.
On that. And then overall quality of life in the county, and that got 4.3. That was the highest.
That was our highest rating, and I guess
Yeah.
if one of those is going to be rated high, it's nice that overall quality of
Yeah.
life is rated high. And I think that 4.3 on a scale of 1 to 5 is really a pretty strong score. And we know that we live in a beautiful place. We know we have a great environment here, and it shows in the data.
The last question on the attitudes was a great place to work, and that got a 3.8. And I know one of the earlier surveys had talked about underemployment being a major issue, and now this is at a 3.8 for a great place to work. Is that normal? Is that good?
I think if a corporation, I do marketing research, and I think if a company was looking at a similar type of score, I think they would believe that was very, very good. Most of the services that the county provides perform better than services that are provided by private industry. But still, there's room for improvement there. You know, it's a great place to work, but you know, there's some issues with jobs and dissatisfaction with jobs, and I think that comes through here.
And something else that was different in this year's survey is we asked what are the important things that Larimer County should be working on. Do you kind of give us an idea of maybe the top 4 or 5 that come to mind?
Well, the top 40 or 50. I mean, people had a wide range of responses, and one of the things that came through the most was to protect the county, the environment of the county, be that in not necessarily just open spaces, but in effective road construction and the landfill and recycling and things like that. That was the thing that came through most. There was some need for some social services. People felt the need that we could do a better job here in the county of providing social services, juvenile support, children's support, some things like that. Roads and bridges always comes through. That was one of the things, and not just the roads and bridges issue, but the general transportation issue. We all spend time waiting at the stoplights and going over some bumpy county roads from time to time, and people notice those things, and I think that they think that those could be performed a little bit better.
Well, I think we should clarify the bumpy roads and the stoplights are in the city. So
Right.
They're not in
That's
the
right, Neil.
unincorporated area.
Yeah, and in fact, we tried to be as clear about that as we could, that we were talking about the unincorporated areas of the county.
Part of the survey points out these services are performed only in the unincorporated area, and that's a very short list of services that are only
Right.
performed in the areas that are outside any city limits.
Right.
But most of the services that Larimer County provides are performed everywhere in the county.
That's right.
Inside city limits, outside city limits. So you do pull out the ones that are only performed just so that you can see how they're doing. But most of the services are performed everywhere.
Yeah, as you said, you gave the example of roads and bridges, and if we had just asked about roads and bridges in general, People would think, because most people, or so many people live in the city limits, people would think they're talking about the road right outside in their neighborhood, but that's generally not a county road. So we had to be real careful. Law enforcement, the sheriff, and things like that. Things
Our
performed,
natural resources,
natural
parks and urban
resources
lands, yeah.
performed outside city limits.
And there's really very few things. I mean, all the public health, human services, all those services are countywide.
Off the top of my head, I think 7 of the 32 services are only performed outside the city limits, and the rest are performed, like you said, public health. And
Right, that's just
Public
about
safety,
right,
yeah.
right. So what, in essence, what would you say, how is the county doing?
I think the county's doing well. I think that you've tapped into what people need. You've tapped into what people want. You're providing those things that they need and want. I think there's always room for improvement. I think that, and we've seen improvement over time. And I think if we're sitting here in another 6 years, we'll be talking about numbers that are a little bit better than they are now. And I think one of the ways that we can move towards that is by doing effective budgeting. And I think people want to see that. I think people want to see protection of the environment and a few things like that. So I think the county's doing well. I love giving this presentation to the county employees because it's everyone likes to hear good news, and in general, it's good news.
When you look at trending over time, stability again is the word that you use.
Stability comes through.
With
It
a
absolutely does.
Slight move upward.
A slight move upward. If we look at any individual service, we'd find more variation in how it was performed. But if you put everything together, overall, there's an incredible amount of stability with a slight upward trend.
And just a short conversation, always reaching citizens so that they'll know what's going on with the county and can get engaged, and we can make sure we're offering the services that they need. There are lots of ways to contact people, and so we ask what media sources do you use? And county programming on cable TV was ranked about 60% on the useful scale, and actually county meetings on your local cable television here was at the 70%, so that's good. And the highest was, of course, our website with a very good, that's what people use the most for county information.
There's so many things you can do on the website. And I remember doing these surveys several years ago, and there were a lot of comments about, well, we need to get the word out a little bit more so people will use the site. And people are using it now. And that reflects here.
That would be interesting to see from 2002 to the one we just recently did.
Right. It would be interesting
change.
to go back and track that individual number. But I think we can say that people are using that site more and more. We know it's a good site, and people are relying on it to make their lives a little bit easier.
Right.
And it comes through.
There are certain things that people can pay for, county services, right over the website.
Yeah, more and more one-stop shopping.
Yep.
And that's in the 90% range for usefulness. And the 80% range I thought was very interesting too are the in-person meetings, the county meetings. We have a lot of meetings where we go out to neighborhoods and areas, communities, and meet with citizens. And, it may not be hundreds of citizens at that meeting. Maybe it's 20 or 25, but it's a personal interaction with the commissioners. And in-person meetings seem to be a good way to get information out too. It's labor intensive, but
right, they score high.
They score high.
And as you say, not a lot of people go to those meetings, but those that do apparently get a lot out of it.
And tell their friends.
And tell their friends.
That's good. So, what would you, if you're wrapping up the surveys, like we talked about, stability is like probably the number one. I remember when the economic hard times really hit, and everybody would say a flat budget was a great budget. And we're saying stability is a good thing.
Right.
It's with a little growth up.
Stability is a good thing. I think if 10 years ago we looked at the potential data and said if we knew what was going to happen with the economy and all, I think we would have expected to see a lot more shifting in performance over time. We would presume that we would have that, but I think it's held steady despite the budget constraints that the county and the city and the state have been through.
Yeah, I think what you said is our performance is still okay or up there despite the fact that maybe our viewers don't know, but we have made budget cuts, and yet it wouldn't necessarily be reflected into the survey because we're still our ratings are still
Right.
up
Very
there.
good.
Right.
Yeah.
They're very strong.
Okay. Anything you want to add as we close the program today?
Oh, it's always fun to do the survey, and it's fun to put your ear to the county and see what things people have to say. It's a nice confirming feeling when you find out that you're living in a place that people enjoy being in and people appreciate the county, and it's just it's always a pleasant experience, and it's a real good pat on the back for the county employees too.
And we'll probably call you in 2 years.
I'll be here.
And, I want to say thank you to the people who filled out the survey. It was
Absolutely.
random. They were asked at random, and we really appreciate them taking the time to let us know what they think.
That's a really important point that we don't emphasize enough. Any individual might sit down and say, if I don't fill this out, what does it really matter?
It matters.
It does matter.
It does matter.
It absolutely matters. It really helps guide the county. It does.
Well, thank you. If you filled out one of those surveys, we want to especially thank you. But thank you, Dr. Gilliland, for joining us today.
My pleasure.
And of course, my co-host, Neil Gluckman.
Thank you.
And I'm Danny LaRue, Larimer County Community Information Manager. And most importantly, thank you for joining us for That Larimer County Show.